Wizards of the Coast is doing some epically cringy shit to its user base, and they're gonna put a lot of third-party businesses out of business. What the hell is this? Whatever. What? And they're putting a lot of third-party publishers out of business just for the sake of profit, and they want to make a little bit more money, and it's disgusting. Let's hear what he has to say um, about it. I'm gonna start it off, and I'm gonna get myself some Powerade.
There's something very special about the way entertainment companies are run. It feels like the people at the highest level are just these soulless husks in suits that don't even understand what fun is. I honestly wouldn't be shocked to learn that half the CEOs of major entertainment brands have been lobotomized. Who remembers a couple of years ago when EA tried to convince the world that their loot boxes aren't a greedy cash grab meant to squeeze as many doubloons out of their customers as possible? They were actually surprise mechanics, meant to be fun. No, this isn't shady or unethical. They're fun surprise mechanics. The point I'm making is there's no shortage of delusional companies in the entertainment space. And now I think we have a winner for the most delusional company out there at the moment. Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro. I'm going to put them together because it's still not super clear to me who's the one at the helm making these bafflingly awful decisions that are sinking their companies.
Both of them.
So, Wizards of the Coast is responsible for a lot of things that you probably love. For example, me, Magic cards. While I'm not a huge Magic the Gathering player, like actively competing in like MTG Arena or anything like that, I did get very into collecting the cards. In fact, throughout all of 2016, I spent it trying to collect every masterpiece from the Kaladesh set. And I do have that finished, as well as Amonkhet as well.
Show up.
So I was a big collector of Magic the Gathering, and a big fan of the property. So you can imagine my surprise and disgust when I learned that last month, Wizards of the Coast pulled down its pants and planted their stinky ass in the face of every Magic the Gathering fan. They announced the 30th anniversary set for Magic the Gathering. It was supposed to celebrate 30 years in the business. However, it was a complete fucking disaster for so many reasons. This is a great video right here that goes over everything wrong with it, so I highly recommend checking it out if you're curious.
I'm not a Magic the Gathering fan, but I heard the gripe about it, and yeesh, that's not good.
But I'll break it down for you in a nutshell. Magic the Gathering, in their 30th anniversary set, announced that they'd be reprinting some of the most famous cards, you know, like the Black Lotus that I'm sure all of you have heard of before. However, this was a set that was priced at $1,000 per 4 packs. For 4 packs, you get randomized cards, so you don't even really get the cards you want, you're still gambling on them, for $1,000. So you could just get, like, actual fucking popsicle sticks in your pack, but you paid $1,000 for it. And not only that, none of the cards are legal. You can't use any of the cards. They're fake. You're paying for proxies. They're not real fucking cards. So you're paying $1,000 for 4 packs of randomized garbage, hoping that you get like one of the Power 9, and you can't even use them. It's a giant scam. Like, you're just getting hosed for money. It's extremely greedy. It was a terrible celebration for 30 years because this was just them spitting in the community's face. Another slimy thing they did is they refused to allow local card shops to carry 30th anniversary packs. You could only get them directly from Wizards of the Coast. So it shut down card shops even being able to offer these. There's a lot of other things that went into it, but this is just the glaringly obvious stuff because it's Wizards of the Coast just slapping the community and showing complete disrespect for them. And this was only one of 2 major fumbles they've had in the last month. Their biggest one is what I'm actually here to talk about today. Wizards of the Coast is behind Dungeons & Dragons, as I'm sure most of you know.
Yep.
Dungeons & Dragons is arguably one of the most popular brands ever. Dungeons & Dragons is something I'm sure everyone's heard of. Even if you don't play it, even if you joke about it, you call everyone a turbo nerd who plays it, doesn't matter, you've heard of it. It's an extremely recognizable name, and now Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are using it like a cum rag. They have just potentially ruined what made Dungeons & Dragons such a massive success. There's another great video going over this topic in detail, so I highly recommend...
Crit Crab. Ooh, he got shouted out by Charlie and Asmongold. That's awesome. Congratulations, Crit Crab. I've been a long time watcher and been listening to you for the last like five years or so. Good job. Congratulations. I don't know if this is the first or second or third time you've been recognized or any time, but yeah, cool. Hopefully this gets you a lot more subscribers. Sucks it had to be this dirty, awful, stinky, nasty, disgusting news. But, you know, like you said in the video, there's other mechanics, there's other games. Tabletop's not gonna go away. It just sucks for the people who are super, super, super into Dungeons and Dragons.
And checking this one out if you're curious as well. The links to both of these videos will be in the description. I just want to hit on the broad topic here and go over everything. So, Wizards of the Coast is targeting Dungeons and Dragons because they believe it is under monetized, which is of course scary for the communities that love these games. I've only done one full Dungeons and Dragons campaign and I had a great time doing it.
I've never done one. I've only done the one that me and my friend do on Discord, the Regicide. You might have seen it on YouTube. Check it out if you get the chance. But yeah.
Don't really want to talk about the GM behind the game. That was a whole can of worms that, we don't need to get into the weeds of. But the game itself, I really loved it, and I definitely understand people's passion for it. So the community's outrage here is warranted 100% because their idea completely shuts down pretty much everything that made this game so popular. So let me go ahead and put a bib on you as I feed you these vegetables. Hasbro's not doing so hot financially. They dropped 40% last year, and they've had to cancel quite a few projects. And they started to realize, well, Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro started to realize that Dungeons and Dragons, being their biggest IP, isn't super well monetized when you look at the actual, nitty-gritty of it. It's estimated that Dungeons and Dragons has pulled in about 1.3 billion. However, they've only seen around 100 to 150 million in revenue from D&D. So they're leaving a lot of money on the table, and they're doing everything they can to get their hands on those extra schmeckles that they're not currently putting in their pocket. So they started turning their attention towards the community and speculating on how could they monetize that sector, because that's by far where most of the money is being generated. Something like Critical Role, which is the biggest stream on Twitch when it comes to the amount of money that it's bringing in, like subs and all of that. Critical Role is a third-party Dungeons & Dragons production that is their own custom experience and campaign that is so big that it even got its own Amazon Prime show. So
Yep.
there's a lot more like Critical Role, but they're by far the biggest. It's very much so that Dungeons & Dragons has the most success because of their open game license.
And who better to monetize than the people who create their own content better than them? This takes us to the open game license. For those who don't know, any Dungeons & Dragons content that is created by anyone other than Wizards can only do so because of the open game license, a document that effectively allows people to create and profit off of their own original Dungeons & Dragons content. No paperwork needed, no need to pay anyone royalties, just go for it.
I would argue that the open game license with Dungeons & Dragons is solely responsible for its massive explosion over the last decade, because this Dungeons & Dragons content, the homebrew, all of these custom campaigns, have been a
Definitely.
massive success online. And now you can
Definitely.
take that old open game license and shove it right up your ass, because it is worthless now. According to new information, as well as, again, some unconfirmed leaks, but there is a lot of meat behind the authenticity of it. There's a lot of things that suggest that this is accurate, and I'll get into that in a moment. According to these upcoming changes, all of that is obsolete. So, 3 things that you're immediately going to have to do is you're going to have to agree to these new terms that are coming out. You're going to need a badge on your work, and you're going to need to report everything that you're selling using the Dungeons & Dragons property, as well as report all of your earnings, like 50 grand plus, stuff like that. But that's not the worst of it at all. That's small potatoes compared to the bigger changes. So one major thing that is now 100% going into effect, as I understand it, is if any of these custom campaigns are making above $750,000 in a year, they are now going to be subject to royalties that will need to be paid to Wizards of the Coast. Now, you might be hearing that number and being like, wow, that's a lot. That sounds reasonable. These are major players like Critical Role. I mean, they should be paying royalties. And you can debate that all night and day till the cows come home, that's fine. But it only gets more brutal from there and more suffocating. So it's not only just targeting the major big boys, it's kind of targeting everything, at least according to the leaks. And mind you, this seems to be applied retroactively, so anything that existed on the old open game license is now obsolete. That whole agreement is unauthorized.
Yesterday, January 4th, a journalist named Linda Codega stated that she received the new OGL from a reputable, unnamed source. You will owe 25% on any money that you make that exceeds $750K. The leak also says that if you release on Kickstarter, you only have to pay 20%. Which sounds strange, but the director of games at Kickstarter, John Ritter, retweeted the thread with the leak and said that Kickstarter was contacted after Wizards decided to make OGL changes.
So this is where the information's coming from. This is where the leak all started. Now, I think there is a lot of merit behind this being a very real possibility, considering that a higher up at Kickstarter retweeted this document, as well as giving more insight that Wizards of the Coast did contact them about that 20% share. So that feels like this is something that they're strongly considering implementing sometime relatively soon. Now let's get to the change that is by far the scariest one for the community. In here it says, one of the caveats is the company can modify or terminate this agreement for any reason whatsoever, provided we give 30 days notice. So what does this mean? Well, a lot of you may have found $750K to be reasonable. Like, okay, that's a lot of money. They can take some royalties on it. That's fine. But with this in here, it's them saying, okay, it doesn't really have to be $750K. As long as we give you 30 days notice, we can come swoop in and like terminate this whenever we want. Or they can modify it whenever they feel like it. Like, hey, Junior, I saw you and your high school theater troupe was running this YouTube channel for a DnD custom campaign. You guys made like, what, $3,000 in ad revenue over the last year? Well, Hasbro's really fucking sinking down the shitter right now. We're down another 40% this year, so I think we're going to come take some royalties on that. Here's your 30-day notice, just, you know, giving you a heads up. Like, they can now just continuously change things as long as they give you that notice. There's just no security. There's no stability for anyone that is making these third-party D&D, this content, anything like that. It's just a very scary area for it to be in right now. And if all of these leaks are accurate, if all of these changes do come true, I absolutely could envision this being the end of Dungeons & Dragons. Because no one's just playing vanilla Dungeons and Dragons, not to the level that people are doing these third-party stuff and their own custom adventures.
Not anymore.
So, like, if that element is gone, most people are just not gonna really play. Like, you know how many new people Critical Role brought to Dungeons and Dragons? An incalculable amount. That's how probably the majority of people have found it more recently, is things like Critical Role and the other big players in the space. So if they can no longer flourish, well, you're gonna lose a lot of potential players or a lot of existing community members. They'll go somewhere else. They'll start their own stuff in a less restrictive environment. It is absolutely a potential community killer here. They've made an enemy out of the people that use their property. The people that are the biggest fans, they have now vilified. And I don't see how they could possibly view this as a positive change that'll end up making them more money. That 100 to 150 mil that they're making right now, should all this go through, I think gets slapped in half. Like, I don't see them making money on it. Of course, I could be very wrong. I'm not the most savvy businessman.
They'll scheme some money out of it for a while. They'll milk it out, but it's after that first hit, after that first hit's taken, it's done. Nobody's gonna do it anymore. They're all gonna jump ship.
And in the world, but this is like, if you're gonna kill the community, who the fuck's gonna be buying shit from D&D if there's no longer a flourishing community to support it? So it's just a nonsensical, greedy change. And if you want more information on it, again, this video goes into more detail about all of it. And there's a lot of content and topics talking about all of it because it's such a big deal. So yeah, again, none of it's fully confirmed, but there is a lot to suggest that this could be right around the corner. And I wanted
Yep.
to talk about it because I think this is probably the most delusional company move I've seen since Tumblr banned porn. I don't know what they're thinking here. The greed is getting the best of their brains, and they're making rash, terrible choices. So yeah, I wanted to talk
Agreed,
about it a little
Charlie.
bit, and that's about it. See ya.